Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and I'm here today to talk to you about Doom Patrol Season 1. Doom Patrol came out on DC Universe back in the day, a few years ago, and that streaming site is no more. But, you can't deny, even though the streaming site was that of a failure, it gave some good money for like CGI in terms of like a budget when it came to their shows, especially that of Doom Patrol. The CGI was always on point for the most part. Even if it looked a little wonky at times, it was still good. Once it went over to HBO Max in season 3, well, the CGI hasn't looked so stellar in some parts, mainly Madame Rouge's baby. But Doom Patrol is a beautiful disaster of a TV show. It was a breath of fresh air when Titans season 1, well, actually, the entirety of Titans was just too dark, too gritty, and it really didn't do character development all that well with its main cast, except for that of Dick Grayson and a little bit of Raven. But then in came Doom Patrol, and many people didn't know who the Doom Patrol were. I have only seen them once in the Teen Titans cartoon series. I know they're a group of superheroes that's associated with that of Beast Boy. They appeared in Titans season 1, which was a backdoor pilot, and many people loved that episode. And then they got their own series, but Beast Boy was nowhere to be found in this new series. And then the introduction of Crazy Jane and Cyborg, so people were left a little confused. As time passed, it was revealed that the Doom Patrol that was on Titans is an alternate version. And so, like, many people assumed that the Doom Patrol would, like, gradually become that of a superhero, like, group. Because, first they had to flesh out their stories and who they were and stuff like that. So that's what, and then even in the narration in the season 1, it kept telling us, alluding to that fact that they're gonna become a superhero team. Boy, they pulled the rug over our heads. They tricked us big time. Each season that kept passing, they kept tricking us. Season 4 comes out later this year, and supposedly at the end of season 3, they are now a superhero team led by Rita and everything. Which I don't understand how, because she doesn't have much superhero experience and everything, and she's never really been on a team. It would have made more sense for Cyborg to be the team leader because he was a hero before like joining the group. But hey, whatever, And so season 1 is so good. It's so emotional. There's so much depth. There's so much character development. There's so much, like, there's grittiness in the form of like empathy and drama and just tragedy and everything. Like, you really feel sad for these characters. You really do. Like, you just feel something for them, and they're fake fictional characters. Like, they are the original X-Men team in the DC Comics. They came out years before X-Men, and of course Marvel stole from them and stuff. And like, when they always came to the X-Men, I've never felt sorry for them. Like, I never felt why they had to feel ashamed of who they were, because they had superpowers, and they had cool superpowers, and they had cool costumes and everything. So I never understood the whole hate of mutants and why people feared them and why the characters are always so depressed and all this other crap. Even in the live action movies, I never understood that. And none of the cartoon series. But then with this show, I get it. Like, I finally get it. You know what I'm saying? And one of the reasons why I finally get it is because instead of an action-packed series, This revolved more around story building and storytelling and character development. And when you see some of them, like Cliff, who's literally a robot man, or Cyborg, who's half human, half robot, or when Rita goes in her blob form, or Larry with all the bandages, you really feel for these people. These group of people are basically immortal. They can die, they basically have longevity, and they've been around for decades. And for decades, they hate themselves. They think they're freaks of nature. They don't leave the house because of fear of what people might think of them. Except for Jane, she leaves, and Cyborg didn't join until season 1. But the rest of the group, they just live in a manor by themselves, living in wallow and everything. It's like a huge woe is me like group of people. And they're sad. Oh, they sad, they sad, they sad. And they feel like they're monsters for two reasons. Like, you normally think they feel like monsters because of the way they look and their abilities and how they're not normal. But then when you find out what they have done in their past, then you start to not feel so sorry for them no more, because they were like terrible people. Some of them were, not all of them, but the most of them were. And it's almost like karma. Like, they literally say this is karma, this is their curse, this is their penance for what they've done in the past and everything. But then there's a huge twist that I did not see coming. And like, this series, even though it's so sad and everything, then they turn things around on its head and act totally silly and wacky. That took people by surprise. It's almost like watching Deadpool and, like, I don't know, or in some really sad like show, you know? And it's crazy how wacky and silly this show is, and it gets away with a lot of stuff that most other properties can't. Like, you take Batman and Robin the movie, a commercial failure, but then you have a show like this that's very similar, and it's like a huge success. And not only that, but they manage to take C, D, and F listing heroes and villains and make them very popular and entertaining and stuff. Like Flex Metallo. I've never heard of that dude before, and he is hilarious and stuff. Now, there are some new creations for the show. Admiral Whiskers, gee, and Ezekiel the Cockroach. I wish they was in the comics, but they aren't. But they made them for this show, and they are hilarious and stuff. And so, I've already reviewed the first episode. Go watch that. And so with the rest of this, so now the Doom Patrol, that's what I'm just gonna call them, they now need to find Niles Calder. And so, like, this is the second episode when you get introduced to Cyborg and everything. And Cyborg is, well, we all know him from Teen Titans. He's been introduced in the Justice League and more recent comics and stuff. But in this version, he knows a lot of superheroes and a lot of people, the Justice League. And in the first season, we keep getting mention of members of the Justice League and the Justice League themselves. They mentioned Batman, the Flash, Aquaman. And I think he tried out for Justice League but got rejected. Mostly he's a low-level superhero who just stops like muggers and stuff like that, and bank thieves. He's never really done anything really huge in his superhero life. And just like many other characters, he has tragedy of his own. Like, the way he came to be, he was in college, he was a football star, or maybe he was in high school, a football star. He was 18 when the accident happened. Him and his mom was having an argument. he knocks over a bunch of chemicals and an explosion happens. And it's a very horrific scene where we see his father ripping his limbs apart, trying to save his life, attach like mechanical objects to him, turning him into that of a cyborg. And so his father communicates with him all the time through like a view screen in his head. And so like his father works for Star Labs. And because of this, Vic gets a lot of perks, a jet, money, stuff like that, to do his superhero type stuff. And so at some point in time, it leads him to like Doom Manor and against his father's wishes. And so he needed help with something. I forget exactly what. And that's when he gets introduced to like some of the newer team members and stuff. And so the people who live in there, right? And so they tell him, you know, the chief is missing and this and that. And so like he helps them try to find the chief against his dad's wishes. His dad doesn't want him to have anything to do with Niles and stuff, but his father will not say why. And so as he's helping them and everything, he realizes a lot of the people in the city are inside a donkey. Yeah, I told you it gets weird. And so after Jane gets like spit out and everything, they realize they have to go inside the donkey to like, you know, get the rest of the people out. So the thing about this show is that it's a group of people who don't want to interact with the real world and don't want to help people out even though they have abilities. But they always get convinced by another member of their team, normally that of like Cliff or that of Cyborg. And so Rita and Larry, they're just all about themselves. They just don't want to deal with the rest of the world. But, you know, with some convincing, they have Rita and, you know, go inside the donkey and get the other people out. And so once everybody's out, there's no chief in everything. It turns out Mr. Nobody has captured him. And so Mr. Nobody, he pretty much just narrates the whole show in a very hilarious meta, fourth wall breaking kind of person. And so back with Cyborg. Because of his experience and everything, he's going to help the team out in helping find Niles. So he helps organize a lot of stuff, and it's basically a big scavenger hunt. It's one clue leads them to another, to like another, to another. And Mr. Nobody is kind of helping to steer them off course and everything. And one of the reasons why is that Mr. Nobody just hates Niles to death, and he wants everybody else to hate him. And so Mr. Nobody's purpose in this is to steer them off course, but to a course that will cause them to hate Niles and everything. And so because of this, it leads to that of the original like Doom Patrol and their heartbreaking story of how their last battle was that of fighting Mr. Nobody. And so when they fought him, it left them traumatized and weak and defeated to the point where they are literally living in like a nursing home, but they don't even know it because their minds are being altered by the leader of like the group. But every once in a while, he goes a little nutty in the head and causes like nightmares to occur. And so once they stop him and everything, they realize that this was a place for like, you know, for them just to retire and all this other stuff. And the dude who takes care of them revealed to Jane that Niles had a room for her there. And Jane doesn't understand like why the chief would like put her there and stuff. Because the chief always talk about how he'll take care of her and this and that, because she thinks of him as like a father figure. And so after a good while of them being like pissy and this and that and finding like a beard eater in there, oh god, that was a nasty episode, they finally find like a person that can send them to like where the chief is at. But they have a hard time finding him, Flex Metallo. They don't know where he's at. And so conveniently, when Cyborg is like kidnapped, they go to the Department of Normancy, and then they find Flex Metallo. He sends them to the white space, which is literally the white space in between a comic book panel and stuff. And they find Mr. Nobody there. And so first he tricks them into thinking they defeated him by having Cyborg comes in and like blast him. But then when I saw that, I'm thinking to myself, well, how in the world did Cyborg even know that they was there? Because he was in the hospital with his father. But then it turns out to be like just Mr. Nobody playing his tricks and everything. And so then Mr. Nobody makes Niles tell the truth, that all of their conditions, the way they gained their superpowers, their deformities, all this and that, was a result of Niles and everything. After this, they are pissed and they go their separate ways. And so Mr. Nobody literally won. He caused people to hate Niles and everything. And not only that, but he still gets the torture. Well, he don't really get the torture Niles, because Niles is out and about now. But he succeeded in his mission of not killing Niles, but to have him live knowing that everybody hates him, until he realized there's only like 2 people left. I'll get to the finale later in this video. Let's get into some characters first. Let's finish with Vic, Cyborg. So, like I said before, you know, after his accident and stuff, he joins the Manor. He helps them find Niles and stuff. Cyborg is going through a bit of an identity crisis and stuff. See, the thing about him is that even though he does like being a hero and stuff, it's his father who likes him being a hero a whole lot more. He's constantly fighting with that of his father. See, his father wants Vic to reach his full potential and everything and prove that he's something in the world, and like, you know, and that like, you know, his accident wasn't in vain, and him being a hero and letting people just know who he is and stuff, without actually letting people really knowing who he is and stuff. See, the thing is, through Cyborg's journey, right, a lot of stuff happens with him. When he is like in the midst of a battle and everything with, I forget who it was, it might have been Mr. Nobody or somebody, and so his arm cannon is about to go off, but the person freezes time while the cannon is still going off. And so when he resets time, the cannon goes off and it destroys half of Vic's arm. And so like, because of that, his systems are like malfunctioning and stuff like that. There's a reset button on him. He tells people don't hit that reset button because he has no idea what it would do. But of course, Cliff does it anyway because it's supposed to, like, you know, save his life. But it will also alert his father, and that's what he does not want. When he hits the reset button, it literally resets everything. And it's starting to, the nanites starts inside him are starting to regenerate his wounds and stuff. So basically, it's regrowing his arm. When he has a cut on his arm, it regrows that. Vic now believes this was a system put in by his father to make him more machine than that of man. And he does not like that. He also finds out, so then he starts like cutting himself, and you know, because he wants to be human, he wants to look human and stuff. And the thing is with him is that at one point when he's talking to Grid is like his software system inside him, and it can answer any kind of questions, stuff like that. He starts to see with the reset button and stuff that he actually has tons of like emails and stuff. See, he's on a dating site. And tons of people swiped him, but he had no idea. This was blocked by his father. And so when he tells his father, you know, what's going on? Why did you keep this from me? He's all like, he didn't want nothing to distract him from his superhero duties. And so he's all like, you know, that's messed up. He's not allowed to have a personal life because his father refuses to let him have it. And he feels like he's being controlled by his father, like he's some type of puppet and a puppet master and stuff. So when he's looking at like all the women that swiped him, which are a lot, like, you know, a lot of them are all kind of like, you know, oh, you're a cyborg, can you do this, can you do that? So he knows people like him for who he is and stuff. So then he talks to one woman that didn't have anything asking about him being cyborg or a superhero or nothing like that. And so when he starts to talk to her, she wants a recent picture. Well, Grid read through his memories and wants to see this woman. So Grid finds her by hacking a camera on like a bus, and he can see the woman. At first, Cyborg thinks that's like a violation, but then he decides to do something that breaks his heart. When he sends a woman a recent photo of him, because his photos of him were before the accident, so he sends one of him looking like a cyborg and everything. And he can see the woman in real time. And when she's looking at the picture, she is disgusted and she blocks him. This breaks his heart because he knows that a normal person will not accept him for what he looks like. And because of that, he deletes his entire dating profile. He is a man trapped inside of, oh, actually he's a man, he's a robot. I'm thinking of Cliff. And he needs this robotic stuff to stay alive. Like, it's now a part of him. And he has to accept that. But the real world will not accept him for who he is. And so all he just wants to do is rip out all his electronics, but he knows he can't, because if he does, he will die. And that's really a hard thing to do, because it's kind of like you're living inside like a prison and everything. And that's what a lot of these Doom Patrol people do. They live in the prison within their own bodies and stuff. And so, like, at one point in time, when the beard hunter is there, I think, actually, I skipped that episode. I watched it years ago, but when I rewatched it again, I skipped it because I just didn't want to. I hate the beard hunter dude. Oh my god, I hate that guy. Plus, I didn't want to see Niles hooking up with like a cave woman and stuff. But basically, trying to think. When Vic is captured by the Department of Normancy, Mr. Nobody plays with his mind. And as a result, he ends up beating the holy crap out of his father when his father rescues him and tries to like save him with like a chip and everything. They're supposed to reboot his systems better, and so he had better clarity and stuff. And he nearly kills his father. And when he realized what happened, he is devastated and heartbroken, which causes him not to go to the white space when the rest of the Doom Patrol goes and he's in the hospital, which is why I thought it was weird when he showed up out of nowhere dressed in the colors of Mr. Nobody and supposedly destroyed Mr. Nobody. And so, like, at some point he finds out what Niles did. See, Niles went to Vic's mother because, see, Mr. Nobody revealed to Cyborg that his father gave him fake memories of the accident, and he didn't like tell the entire truth. What happened was Niles went to that of Cyborg's mother, and he reveals that he's done some terrible things and don't judge him and everything. And so at some point in time when Vic had that accident with the mom, Niles tried to help, but they could only save one. And Niles had a motive and everything. Because Vic was younger and healthier, he wanted him to have the cybernetics to save his life. And so they allowed Vic's mother to die. Victor Stone's father, Sal Stone, did not want to do this. He wanted to save both. But Niles insisted that, you know, Vic would be the better candidate for, like, you know, the metal grafts and cybernetic grafts. But then Sal told Niles, you know, I know what you've been doing with all those people you experimented on, and this is now what you want to do to my son and let my wife die. So he told him to erase that memory from Vic so that Vic wouldn't like feel sad about that and stuff. And so that's the deep dark secret he's been holding from his son and everything. And so Niles only did all this because Niles is looking for a way of immortality himself. And I'll get into him a little bit more later. And so it sucks. Like, it really sucks that Victor had this fake memory in his head and not the whole truth. And knowing, because he keeps replaying this memory in his head of how his mom died. He is the one who caused like the explosion and stuff. And he has to live with that basically for the rest of his life, for however long his immortality lasts. And that's just like a tragic thing. Now, Vic and his father do start to get along after this, of course, because he nearly tried to kill him and stuff, which is great. Because, those two always had like a troubled relationships, even in the comics and in the movies and all this other stuff. Now, this Cyborg is the old school one where his father came up with technology, human technology, to save him. It's not the one from the New 52 where he gets infused with a mother box and everything and joined this Justice League. Now, the design of this Cyborg, a lot of fans kept debating which Cyborg is better, him or Ray Fisher. And I will say Ray Fisher probably has the better looking suit, but the actor in Doom Patrol is a better actor and stuff. And so, because, Ray Fisher hasn't really done much on TV. He's mostly done theater his entire life, and Justice League was the first big thing he ever did. And then he had a TV show after that. But I don't know how that fared and stuff. Now, I will say the design of this Cyborg, I'm a little mixed and torn. See, this Cyborg is weird. He wears a jumpsuit all the time. A tracksuit. Because, even though DC Universe gave them money, they didn't have that much money to make a convincing cyborg looking thing. Same thing with Cliff and stuff. That's why Cliff wears like regular clothes. And so like, we'll see his arm, we'll see like the headgear, that's about it. And he'll wear like a vest underneath that's supposed to be like in a cyborg looking thing. But it's literally just a vest. And it looks too rubbery and everything. Like his metal parts just look like rubber. And that's quite a shame. I've seen like on Power Rangers, VR Troopers, and even Beetleborgs, that show Beetleborg Metallic or whatever, their suits, here's the thing. In Beetleborgs, their suits look like plastic, not so much metal. But in VR Troopers, they actually look like they was wearing a variation of both metal and plastic and stuff. And couldn't they have done that here? Like, I've seen some metal heroes that look like they're wearing a suit of armor and everything. And all it is just some chrome painting or some die cast here and this and that, And they could have done that with this Cyborg. Gave him a little bit like die cast here and there, a little bit chrome painting. But instead, it's just this silvery, rubbery look. So it's okay. And I like the fact that it's practical. Because the thing about Ray Fisher's suit is all CGI. And it's a little too chromy, but it's still a nice suit and everything. So I just wish they would give him a full body suit as well, but not so rubbery looking, So let's get to our next Metal Man, Cliff Steele, also known as the Robot Man. Cliff as a person was a terrible, terrible, terrible human. Now he rose from like his trailer park and became like a NASCAR driver and one of the best. He is a great driver. But he is a crappy father and an even crappier husband. He's banging the nanny and everything. He neglects his daughter. He cheats on his wife. And so when they start to have an argument during his race, like he was almost in a car crash during the NASCAR thing. Niles literally said that he intended for Cliff to die at the NASCAR thing, not on the actual road with his family. And so when Cliff finds this out, he is pissed beyond belief. Cliff is the first person we see in the show who's going through the transition and everything. And it's very sad, it's very depressing to the point where he even locks himself in the room and plays with like little race cars and stuff. and so like little toys. And so when he gets into the accident with his family, only the daughter survives. But first Niles lies to him and says that everybody died. Turns out the daughter is still alive. And he doesn't know what he wants to do. He wants to see his daughter, but will she accept him looking like a robot man? Now, the only parts of robot we see in him are like the feet, the hands, and the head. And it looks great. It actually looks like rusty old metal. But he wears this giant bodysuit and like clothes and stuff because they can't go full robot man on the show. Now, Brandon Fraser only voices the character. Somebody else is playing him. And they do a great job of like, playing off one another. And so while on the Doom Patrol, he has a very difficult time adjusting to his surroundings. He thinks it's in the 80s. He wakes up in the 90s as just a brain. The brain is the only thing that survived. So he is literally a brain trapped inside a robot's body. And he cannot taste. He cannot feel the wind blowing on him. Somebody touches him, he can't feel that. And like he's hungry, but of course he can't eat nothing. And so like then it's like the 2020s, and so like this is when he get introduced to like Jane and Cyborg. He doesn't know who Jane is because she's been away and everything, and she was there in the 70s and left. And so him and Cyborg don't get along very well at first. Cliff is a very rude, very blunt man who loves to drop off F-bombs and stuff. When he meets Jane, he starts to feel something for her because his memories are constantly resurfacing, and he pictures his daughter in Jane's body. So this is why he feels so much empathy for her and always tries to help her cope and stuff, but she doesn't want his help. She rejects like anybody who's new. She rejects like men and everything, but at some point she does start to come around, especially the other or two of the personalities inside her. Baby doll, especially baby doll, is literally just a baby. And so him and Jane have a rocky relationship. She does start to care for him after a while, but every once in a while she gets like very pissed at him. And Jane's other personalities hate him because they're there to protect Kay and everything. And so with Cliff, his main thing is he wants to be a hero. He's all like, hey, we got these powers, might as well do something with it. So when everybody wants to flee, when everybody goes inside the donkey and everything, he's the only person who wants to like combat it and everything. And throughout the entire season, he wants to be a hero and form a hero team. This changes in season 2. And so with the rest of season 1, he's constantly trying to get people in the group to go through like therapy. The therapy episode is one of the most powerful episodes ever. Because he's trying to get them to cope with who they are, what they are, and how they can overcome it. And they don't want to. They just want to stay in their rooms and just be sad all the time. And it's a nice anthology episode. But in this episode, he is starting to get even angrier when he finds out his daughter is alive. And not only that, but she's calling his best friend father. Now, his best friend used to bang his wife. And after the accident, he took her in and adopted her and stuff. And so Cliff is mainly there for like, comedic relief and also be there for Jane. But during that therapy episode, we see he gets very aggressive and he starts throwing stuff around. He's breaking stuff. He pictures Vic as like his best friend who stole his family for him. So he literally tries to kill Vic and everything. We don't know what's going on. We assume that all his memories are flooding back really fast and messing up with his brain. But then we find out the real reason, and it is hilarious. There's a rat inside his body, messing with his brain, messing with his circuitry stuff. It turns out this rat is pissed. And everything. The rat is pissed because Cliff killed his mom by mistake and drove over her. I'll get into Admiral Whiskers later. But during the time Cliff was going crazy, when Jane was being her butthead self, he literally told her, everybody in this room can't stand you. I'm the only person who can. And right now, I don't even want to be around you. This causes her to be pissed and causes her to run off and everything. And so at some point, he finally does make it to where his daughter is at. And he takes Rita with him. And so as he's trying to like find his daughter, he finally finds her. But it turns out Bob, the dude he used to be best friends with, has died. She's emotional. She wants the watch back, Cliff's watch that he gave his daughter, that she gave Bob. But Bob got ate by an alligator, of all things. So he goes to find this alligator in the water and stuff, and Rita goes with him, but she's all like, this is crazy, we need to go back. And then he finally realizes, because he's having an emotional, nervous breakdown, like he just wants his daughter back, he wants his normal life back, but you know, his whole family has literally been taken from him. And so he finally finds that alligator and it eats him. But off screen, he bust straight through it and got the watch back and gave it to his daughter. But he doesn't tell his daughter who he is and stuff. Then in Jane's episode, there's a very powerful episode where Jane is comatose and he has to go inside her mind. And he travels the underground and everything. And I'll get to that a little bit later. And he helps her get back to like the surface and stuff. After they find out what Chief did and everything, and everybody goes to separate ways, Jane becomes a drug addict, and then next thing you know, he's the one for months giving her food and leaving it by like the abandoned place where she's staying at and stuff. So then in the final episode, which I told myself I'll get into that later, so let's get into another character. Let's get into Larry Trainer, better known as Mr. Negative, or no, the Negative Man. And so he is voiced by Matt Bomer, and a lot of people actually want Matt to play a live action version of Superman, because the dude looks just like Superman. He even looks like Henry Cavill and everything. But he doesn't sound like Superman. His voice is just so deep. And even though he looks like a skinnier, slimmer version of Henry Cavill. And he looks like some of the Superman in the past, but he just doesn't sound like Superman. But he's a great Larry and everything. So Larry Trainer, he was a test pilot and everything from back in the 60s. And he had a family, 2 sons and a wife. But he is secretly gay, and his best friend in the military, they're constantly going around, you know, trying to be together and this and that, sneaking around inside the back of pickup trucks and hotels and stuff like that. And so he's been doing that for years. And even when he was that of a kid, you know, it was suspected that he was that way, and his parents had problems with that. And you gotta remember, this dude was an adult in like the 60s. So just think about like in the 40s when this stuff started coming around again and people started hating that stuff. So he's had it rough for years, right? But he bearded his wife and she started suspecting stuff, talking about like, you said all this was gonna stop, all the late nights hanging with the guys in the bars and stuff like that. She is starting to suspect who he is and she wants to leave him and everything. And so he keeps telling her, you know, like this was all gonna stop and all this other stuff. He's in denial and everything. He wants like his cake and eat it too. He does care about his wife and he loves his kids, but his wife is not who he truly wants to desire to be with. He just wants to be with that of a man, and more importantly, his best friend. And so like John Bowers is his best friend. I don't know why that name sounds familiar, but it just does for some reason. And so it's like his best friend sticking through and everything. And so one day, like I said in episode 1, there was an accident when he was in the plane. The negative spirit from outer space went inside his body, crash landed, and burnt him to a cinder. And there's radiation like everywhere. His body emits so much radiation. And so we find out, because his life doesn't get no easier after that. When he is in like a radiation, like, you know, facility in like a hospital and everything, His wife then leaves him. This is finally her escape from him. And she uses this opportunity of all opportunities to leave him, but he doesn't want her to leave him and everything. And so she feels like, I've been living, or you've been living a lie with me, and I've been putting up with it, and now this is finally my escapism. And it's hard to feel for either one, because it's kind of like you understand what both are going through and stuff. And so when she leaves him, his buddies from the military come there, and so does John Bauer. And so, like, John is all like, there was this position that was offered to me out of state, and I was going to take it, but now I'm going to stay here and help you recover. And Larry tells him, just go. Like, just go. Like, Larry's at the point where he knows he can't be around nobody. He knows he can't touch nobody no more. And he can never, ever be with John because they're both men. And so, heartbroken, John leaves. Larry's life only gets more difficult after that. He is later taken to the Department of Normancy and everything. And so they start running like test experiments on him and torturing him to see, what makes his body tick. Can they get that negative energy out his body, that alien entity and stuff? And so the alien thing doesn't want to come out. But then they start torturing him in a way, the way it finally does come out. And he has to have it in him. If it's gone for too long, he will literally die and everything. And the negative spirit, whenever it leaves his body, he just passes out, because he's unable to control it at that time. And so he hates this thing inside his body. And one time, I think when he tried to leave like his room, he starts seeing all these dead bodies. It's his body emitting radiation and stuff. So this is one reason why he doesn't want to be with John and stuff. Don't know why he wanted to be with his wife, knowing he could kill her just by like her being a couple of feet away and stuff. But anyways, when Flex Metallo is kidnapped and taken to the department, Flex is all like, look, man, I ain't staying here like much longer. I'm gonna bust out and I need your help and everything. So he makes an opening for Larry, but it's not big enough for him to crawl through, because he has a dampener on him, Flex, and so that's why he's not unable to make it bigger. So the negative spirit is able to come through, but unable to because the people keep coming back and forth. Larry refuses to help him. Larry's just in a rut. Larry just doesn't care no more. And so this is a missed opportunity, and Metallo was literally there for like over 40, 50 something years and stuff. And longer than that. And so they didn't rescue him until the 2020s. So he's in there for a long time. Let's see, about 60 years he's been in there and stuff. And so Larry was released from the department due to Niles Calder. But Niles had a helping hand in Larry's predicament. Niles knew exactly when that negative spirit would be floating through space, and he made it so Larry would be that test pilot to go up there and everything. And he's the one who sent him to the Department of Normancy and then got him out and everything once he didn't get the results that he wanted, because then he felt bad and let him live in the manor. When Larry finds this out, he is furious, and him and Rita go live in an apartment by themselves and stuff. But for the rest of Larry's journey, when we first meet him in the first couple episodes, he just doesn't want to help. Like, with the superhero stuff, he doesn't even really want to help find Niles and stuff. But, he gets some convincing and stuff. Now, Larry does love to cook, which we don't get to see in this show, but we saw in Titans, though. And when he cooks, he loves to cook a lot. He also loves to attend to his garden that we see in this series. Now, he hates the negative spirit. He wants it out the body. But, of course, he can't. And so he doesn't treat the negative spirit as like part of him. He just treats it as like a virus and everything. This causes the negative spirit to get pissy at him. And when he tells the thing, we need some boundaries and some rules, Larry wakes up and Niles is like laboratory on top of the ceiling because the negative spirit put him up there. And so when he's talking to Jane, he asks her, how do you control like your other personalities? And she's all like, I don't control none of them. We just all get along and we treat each other like equals. And that's what you should do to your little negative alien thing. And so after this, him and the negative thing acts on his own. Whenever Larry's in trouble or the team's in trouble, it will literally come out his body and save the day and stuff. And so at some point they do start to like bond and everything. But he found some old videotapes of himself with Niles, and the negative spirit was able to communicate with Niles, saying that he wants to just torture Larry and cause him pain. And the reason for that is because he can feel Larry hating him, so he just wants to hate him back. So every once in a while, the negative spirit will put Larry in like a trance, like coming out his body, where he has memories of him and John. And some of these memories he doesn't even remember, and some he does. And these memories, is in John is kind of like, even when I take you to this nice gay bar and everything, and I want you to hang out with the dudes, you're still trying to hide and you don't want to accept like who you are and stuff like that. It's an internal struggle that Larry has to go through. It's 2020 and more people, the LGBT, are accepted, but he's still acting like it's 1960 and everything. And so he, not only is he afraid of like, being around people, he's afraid of who he is inside and everything, and almost in like a denial kind of way, even though he knows who and what he is, you know what I'm saying? And so at some point, this causes him to seek out, well, first, when they're looking for Niles and everything, they go to that one German Nazi type dude, and he uses a machine that created Mr. Nobody, and it helps him separate from the negative spirit in a way, the way he won't become like comatose and everything, the way he can still survive just a couple of minutes and everything, and he can be awake. And so anyway, at some point he tracks down John Bowers. John at this time is an old man, a very, very old man. And, him and those two, they talk and everything. And they talk about like the lives they had. John told him, it was hard getting over you, but eventually I did. And, and I found love other places, and I lived my life and all of this other stuff. And they have a really beautiful moment outside just sitting down because, John's so old, he has to be carried and put in a wheelchair and stuff. And they're on the porch and they're just talking, and he's talking about, I lived a good life, and, I just wish I could have spent it with you, but, and all this other stuff. And as Larry is explaining to him, what he's been going through and stuff, then it happens slowly but surely. John passes away, and it's a very heartbreaking scene, but at least Larry got to be with, at least those two got to be with each other in John's final moments, and as a result of this, Larry is more open. He's more willing to talk and stuff like that. He's more willing to like join the group in like certain like, whatever they're doing and stuff like that. And the negative spirit really helps Cliff when they have to go inside Jane. Jane, better known as Crazy Jane in the comics, but they really don't call her that in the show because of reasons, is actually not even really Jane. Hers is a little bit more complicated. She's actually a woman named Kay. But Kay has about 40 something different split personalities. See, when Kay was a young little girl, her father would abuse her sexually and stuff. And so as a result of this, he would always come in the middle of the night and everything and just like, take advantage of her. This caused her to create split personalities. And these split personalities, so basically she lives inside her mind. Kay will live inside her mind with the rest of her split personalities. And these split personalities will come out every once in a while to like protect her. And the one who's the most fierce and powerful of them all is like Hammerhead. She's angry, she's mean, and she doesn't let no man touch Kay and stuff, even no matter what age she is. And that when she comes to the surface. But see, the thing about the personality, they really don't like coming to the surface. So they create a primary. And Kay created the primary known as Miranda. Miranda will live her life all throughout K. And this happened from when she was a kid up until an adult when she got married. Now this happens in season 2. We found out more about that, so I'll get into that in season 2. But basically something bad happens, and Miranda knew she failed. And when she failed, Kay came up with the personality of Jane. And Jane is a very hot-headed, feisty, manic, rude, blunt person who tells you how it is and doesn't care if she hurts your feelings and stuff. And Jane became the primary ever since like adult age and stuff like that. And she continues to be the primary till this day. Now, the other personalities, like I said, they live in what's known as the underground. It's like abandoned subway station that breaks off into tunnels that go into different memories of Kay's life and other memories of the other personality lives. And there are tons of different personalities, but they don't like going to the surface. They just stay inside the mind so they can protect Kay. And for the most part, the only personalities we ever see surface is Hammerhead, Baby Doll, Fire Daddy comes out sometimes, but not really. Fire Daddy's like this giant that throws out flames and stuff. We see Silver Tongue, I think his name is. Let's see, another Flint comes out. Flint is like a teleporting type person. And then there's Karen. Oh boy, Karen. So anyways, so Jane doesn't really get along with the rest of the house group. She comes in and out as she wants, which depresses everybody else because they can't leave the house. And so when, of course, she's there, she finds Niles is missing. She wants to find him because she thinks of Niles as a father figure and everything. Now, each of these split personalities has their own meta-human power. Except for Jane, but I think Jane gets powers in the 3rd season, I think. And so, like, it's quite the journey she goes to. Because, Niles is all like, I'll protect you and all this other stuff. But then she finds out he was going to leave her in a retirement home type place with the first Doom Patrol. And she doesn't understand why this is. And it causes her to act out and everything. Because now she feels like she's being shunned by the chief when she finds this out. When Cliff hurts her feelings and everything, she goes off, but then she goes off, but she doesn't want to be on the surface no more. So she retreats back into the underground and Karen takes over. Karen is a blonde who loves 90s rom-coms, and her power is to make you fall in love with her. And she's in love with one guy and one guy only. They constantly keep dating, breaking up, and all this other stuff. Rita and Cliff have to intervene and prevent her from like marrying this dude. But then something happens. Karen is subdued in the underground and taken away. And when Jane resurfaces, because she's still having it out for Cliff, she goes into a coma because she's going back down in the underworld, and nobody on the underworld is going to the surface because they don't want to. We see not Baby Doll, but we see Karen being dragged off into jail. This is when the negative spirit makes Cliff go inside Jane's head. And as he's traveling under there, like in his human form, he's trying to figure out what the world's going on and what all Jane has to go through and stuff. And she goes through a lot. There are so many different personalities. And they tell her they don't want to be on the surface. They just want to stay there and protect Kay. Kay is manifested herself as that of a small child and everything, and that's the way she that's the way she wants to be. And so when they force Jane to go back to the surface, she's on the train, and conductor 8 or train operator 8 or whatever, no, operator 8. Some of the split personalities look like that of Jane, and other ones just look like completely different people, different races and stuff. And so, like, she tells the conductor person, like, what would happen if I pulled the emergency stop? She's like, well, I don't know. That's never happened before. And so she's all like, I guess it'll have to be repaired and it will take a long time. And so she basically, well, hey, how much time you got? So she pulls it and she just wanders off inside her head and into like her different memories and stuff. And is there, she sees a memory that she doesn't remember. and she meets Penny something, I think, the British one, and and the British girl's all like, oh, I didn't know other people knew of like, this memory. Now, the actress who plays the British person, she's gonna be on Gotham Knights on the CW. So in a way, she's like just there and she's hanging out. And Hammerhead sees that of Cliff in the underground because Operator 8 ratted him out. And they throw him in jail along with some type of thing that looks like the Scarecrow and also Karen. And it's basically a timeout. But then I think her name is Penny, the British one, she helps Cliff escape and she takes him all throughout the underworld. And he's all like, well, I see Jane right there. And she's like, no, that's just a memory. There are tons of Jane memories and Jane manifestations all throughout her memories and stuff. And so so he's getting to relive her tragic past, and she's been in and out of mental wards like constantly. And so the chief was one of those people who counseled her and tried to help her, but then he sees when she gets experimented on. And then it's later revealed that the chief is the one who caused her to get experimented on, that caused her other personalities to have powers. See, they didn't have powers before until Niles intervened, because of course he's looking for immortality. This pisses Jane off and causes her to be a drug addict when she resurfaces later on. But anyway, this is like probably the most, there are 3 powerful episodes, I'll say, in this entire season. The therapy one, the pilot, and of course this one. And so as Jane is trying to figure out who this memory belongs to, she realizes something. She goes to the sisters, the 3 sisters. Now the 3 sisters, the weird sisters, one is voiced by Miss Fairweather from Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue, but we don't get to see her because all that prosthetic and CGI and crap. I'm like, man, this sucks. I've been wanting to see what this woman looks like for years after Power Rangers, and I don't know because there's no recent picture of her. But at least I get to hear her voice and it sounds absolutely the same. Now the weird sisters are kind of bad. They kind of push you in a direction you don't want to go into, and they send her to the well. The well is where Miranda went. When Miranda fell, she threw herself down in the well, killing herself. And so the Miranda personality is gone. But who lives in the well, you wonder? Why is it a bad place? Why does nobody go to that memory and stuff? Well, Daddy lives there. Kay, for whatever bizarre reason, came up with a split personality that is that of her father. He's a giant in the form of puzzle pieces, and he lives down in the well. And supposedly he was dead and everything, but we find out in season 2 he is very much alive. And so when Cliff is trying to like prevent Jane from like going down in like the well, because she tells everybody in her head that, the surface world sucks. Like, I hate being there. Like, y'all have no idea what it's like in the real world. Is difficult. And Jane, the type of person who cannot cope with life and everything, because she's been through too much stuff. And so Cliff, when he has to enter that one memory of like where Jane's by the well and everything, he literally rips off his flesh and back in his robotic form. That's the only way that one split personality will let him go through. And he prevents her from like, killing herself and stuff. So as Cliff encounters Jane and everything, she's all upset. He's trying to like, calm her down and explain things to her, but she's just like always so like erratic and everything. Well, at some point in time near the well, Daddy comes out, and Daddy is like this giant man in the form of that puzzle pieces, because in one of the flashbacks of her, she was putting together a puzzle and he came a knocking with his nasty little self, and so like she's terrified, of course, of like Daddy and all this other stuff, but then she finds the strength deep down inside of her and confronts Daddy and just starts screaming at him, talking about how he'll never hurt her and everything like that, how like she's a stronger person. And like I said before, she's been through like a lot, and she's very old. Not quite sure how old she is, but she's like really, really old, even though she doesn't look it. And so like with the help of like, the chief and Cliff and like all her friends in Doom Manor, she's finally able to, have the strength she needs internally to overcome her fears and her problems and confront Daddy and stuff. So he crumbles away into like a bunch of like tons of puzzle pieces and stuff. And so with Cliff, they return back to the surface, only to find a mess in the little lab part because something went on while they was under and everything. And because something happened to Rita and Vic when they brought the bearded man in, but that's for like another topic and stuff like that. So even though Jane can't get along with everybody in the manor, Cliff is the only one she truly really bonds with because like he imprints his daughter onto her, which she resents, but at that same time because she doesn't have Niles in her life and she sees he's willing to go that extra mile and like be there for her. Now Rita Farr is probably she's just like the actress who plays Jane, gorgeous and everything, right? She's one of the most beautiful women, but she's ugly in the inside that reflects her ugliness on the outside. She is probably the worst character of them all that needs redeeming when you find out about her past. Now, like I told you before, she was in that movie in Africa and she slipped and fell in the dock thing gave away the pier and she fell into the water and got exposed to the gas that turned her into a blob. This was karma because there was a guy on the camera crew with one missing arm and she didn't want to keep looking at a man with no arm. And so she looks at this as penance, but her penance goes way further than that. And so like out of all the group members, she is the one most reluctant to like join in anything. She just wants to wallow in self-pity. She whines and complains a lot, and as a result of that, she's rude to the rest of the members and stuff. And so like eventually she does come around and she helps the group out, and she does help the group cope whatever they're going through mentally and stuff. But then, in one episode, we realize just how deep her sorrows go and how nasty of a person she is. Now, in one episode, she was with this one director-producer guy. And this was old school Hollywood where directors and producers would sleep with the actresses to get them bigger roles. And so she was going to go along with it until her blog form came out and suffocated the man. As a result, the secretary's all like, just say he died of a heart attack and everything. Because she doesn't know what happened. She assumed it because she knows that producer man is always sleeping with women. He's old, so he probably had a heart attack. And so she went along with that. She killed the man and stuff. But she is the person responsible for the death of like a young woman. See, when Rita was growing up, Rita's not even her real name, is Gertrude. And her mother made her change her name to a stage name, and they put her through all these beauty pageants and acting classes and ever since she was a little girl. When Rita was starting off in like the movie business, the producers wanted young women to fool around with. Rita would literally go find tons of young women and dupe them into sleeping with these older producer director men. Basically, she sex trafficked a bunch of people and stuff. And so as a result, like she said, she would help these girls out afterwards and everything like that, but she never did. And as a result, one of these young women took their own lives. When this was revealed, she thought she was telling the older patient, played by Ed Asner, may he rest in peace, but it turned out to be Mr. Nobody. See, he not only does he want them to hate Niles, but he wants them to hate themselves and stuff. This was the most shocking revelation of them all. It's worse than Cliff cheating on his wife. It's worse than Larry cheating on his wife and stuff like that. Like, she literally committed a felony and everything. And so as time passes, and of course they don't ever remind us on the show, people forget about that and tend to forgive her because she's living with her faults. She is a blah monster. Whenever she gets upset or too excited or whatever or stressed out, she starts to lose control of her body and it starts to turn all saggly and wrinkly and sloppy looking into that of a blob. And whenever people see her, they're disgusted by her. She is literally living with her pain every single day. And she constantly has to like motivate herself whenever she wakes up in the morning to pull herself together, because when she sleeps, she's a blob. So when she wakes up, she's giving herself like, things to say, like, only you can go as far as you can and like other kind of stuff. And it helps her, like become whole and everything. One time she tries this and it's not good enough and she literally falls down the drain. And she's going all through off the pipes in that therapy episode. And so like she tends, like I said before, like after all this stuff, she tends to be a much better person. She realizes what she did was wrong, and every day she lives her life to make things better. Now, when she finds out Niles was the reason why she was in that movie and why, she had that accident, her and Larry go and live in an apartment by themselves. And their neighbor is that dude who played Cornelius and She-Hulk, the assistant to the magician man. I didn't know that man's 104 years old in real life. Like, holy crap. And stuff. And so like she doesn't like her new job she has. She's like, teaching like theater, and her teenage class are really mean to her. But her and everybody come back once they hear music playing. And that music is coming from Danny Street. And now we shall get into the final episode. So, Mr. Nobody, he's won and everything. He has caused pain throughout the new Doom Patrol, and he has caused them to hate Niles. Everybody's free from the white space, and Niles is the only person living in the mansion by himself. And everybody else have went their separate ways until they get called back by Danny Street. See, Mr. Nobody forgot there are two people who still love Niles. Danny Street and Niles' daughter who lives in Danny Street. Now, Mr. Nobody has trapped them all in a painting, or Danny Street, that is. Danny Street starts playing music that only the new Doom Patrol can hear. And so they go back to the mansion. And they're not doing it for Niles, they're doing it for Danny. But then Niles reveals to them why he did what he did to them and why he needs to be immortal. He tells them of his daughter that he made with that cave woman, that gorilla looking type woman. And so basically his daughter has a power, and unchecked she could literally destroy probably the world if like she wants to and stuff. And so he has to be there like to calm her down. So that's why he hid her in Danny Street so she can be happy and all this other stuff. Mr. Nobody knows about that, and he's inside the painting with all of them. So they all go in the painting to, help save Niles' daughter. Now, at this point in time, Mr. Nobody, see, he was created also by like Niles and all this other stuff and some German knots and everything. And his woman left him because she thinks he's just a nobody and stuff. And so he's been wanting revenge on Niles the entire time. And so like he recruits two a bug and a rat. Now we get into Ezekiel and we get into Admiral Whiskers, who are made up for the show. So Admiral Whiskers, he was just a rat with his mom. She was trying to cross the street and Cliff drove over her with the bus. He didn't know there was a rat in the street. And so Mr. Nobody convinced Mr. Whiskers, or Admiral Whiskers, to get revenge. He crawled inside Cliff and messed around with his brain and everything else. Then he wanted more revenge, but he didn't know how. Then comes Ezekiel, who's just this religious roach who believes God is some type of like, higher being and wants him to like destroy and rule the world. I don't know why. When he was inside the donkey and everything, he gets out and he won't say. And every time he sees chaos going on by Mr. Nobody, he thinks, "Yay, this is the world being destroyed and everything." But then it doesn't. So then he convinces Mr. Nobody and stuff. Mr. Nobody convinces the rat and him to go inside like the painting and everything else. While in there, they trick him and they find Dorothy. She causes both Ezekiel and Admiral Whiskers to be giant. So now Mr. Nobody has been tricked and defeated by that of a cockroach and a rat. So while the Doom Patrol's in there, he's telling them all the sad story and everything. And so they're all like, "Look, man." Somehow they get to him somehow and convinces him to help them. So he starts narrating, doing what he's doing, warp manipulation type stuff. And so like when he narrates, people pretty much do what they want to do. So he starts narrating like with the Ezekiel and that of Admiral Whiskers. The plan is to destroy them, but they don't know how. So the Doom Patrol also has a trick up their sleeve. They're gonna get rid of Mr. Nobody as well. They're gonna nuke the place and everything. But they need to do it in a way that where they can survive. And since Ezekiel is a giant cockroach, and supposedly cockroaches can survive a nuclear explosion, their job is to find Dorothy and everything. And everybody is to go inside the cockroach, like have him eat them and stuff. Cliff has already been ate by Mr. Admiral Whiskers. Larry is the only person not eaten yet because he's the one with the nuclear power. So they convince Mr. Nobody to convince Ezekiel to eat the Doom Patrol. So they pretend to lose in the battle and everything. He eats every single last one of them. Jane and Calder, the chief, they go and find Dorothy. Now we never get to see her face, but we get to see like her hand and the back of her body and stuff like that. She's a little teeny tiny girl with pigtails and Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz type outfit. And so like while everybody's getting inside the cockroach, they later go inside the cockroach as well. But crap, Larry forgets about Cliff. So he has Ezekiel narrate to, oh God, I can't believe this happens. To have the cockroach and rat make out. This causes Cliff to climb out, slide from the mouth, the rat's tongue into that of inside the cockroach. It's great CGI, but it's gross. So now that everybody's inside there, Larry unwraps the bandages in his hands and he hits like this portal type thing, and that's caused by the negative being inside him, and they nuke the entire place. While inside the bar and everything, what is it? Once they're inside the bar, the Beard Eater and Mr. Nobody is all like, "Wait a minute, if they're inside the cockroach, then what's gonna happen to us?" And they're like, "Oh crap." So then it explodes and they're all safe. Danny Street is now Danny the Brick and has to be rebuilt. And the Beard Eater and Mr. Nobody are trapped inside a white space in the painting. But there's a problem. When Vic cuts them out of the cockroach and everything, they're teeny tiny. And Larry's the only one full body size. So this goes into next season and everything. But the sad part is it only revolves around a couple of minutes in the first episode and everybody's back to normal size. So that's kind of a bummer. But let's get into some characters I haven't even talked about yet. Flex Metallo and everything. He had a wife and he has this ability to flex his muscles and he can create anything he wants. The Department of Normandy captures him and they want him to like serve the country and stuff. But he's there for 60 years and they use his wife as leverage. They'll hurt her if he tries to escape. When he finally does escape, he has no memory of nothing. So once he finally gets his memories back, kinda, Jane and Flint teleport to get his wife, bring her to, like, where they're at. They try to she tries to brainwash them because she's part of now the Normancy and stuff, until she remembers who she is too. Then something happens. She evaporates and gets destroyed. In Flex's arm, he is heartbroken and unleashes his power. Basically like this. If those two would ever be together again, and that means he escaped, and so the Normancy killed her and stuff. It's tragic, it's sad, it's heartbreaking. One of the most hilarious things that happened in the entire season when he tries to get them to the white space. But he flexed the wrong way and he calls everybody on Danny Street along as the Doom Patrol to experience the Big O in a huge, hilarious way. Now, Danny Street is a huge LGBT street. It's basically a street that can teleport any place. And it's where other people, the LGBT, can live and feel like normal and stuff in a world that rejects them. Niles knows about this and he is friends with Danny. And so it's a slightly different in that of the comic. Still LGBT, but different form of LGBT. This one does more with the whole pronouns and stuff like that. And so one agent, I forget his name, he's a black guy, and he goes inside Danny Street because the Department of Normancy wants to investigate Danny the Street because Danny the Street is the most abnormal thing they have ever encountered. And so they send him in, but while he's there, it's almost like he's memorized. Then years later, Vic and Larry find him, and it turns out he's a drag queen. He's always been a drag queen, but he was never allowed to be who he wanted to be, and living inside Danny Street has finally allowed him to be that. When the Department of Normancy finds all them and infiltrates the place, the drag queen dude beats the snot out of the department leader dude and stuff, and tells them, never come back and blah, 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 and, I'm finally who I get to be and all this other stuff. So it's like a huge win for him. So this show is beyond insane and beyond good. Like, it tricked people into thinking it's supposed to be this sad, woe is me show, but then later put in all this crazy zaniness that somehow this show was able to get away with. Similar to that of The Boys, but just zanier and stuff. And this turned out to be a huge hit. Season 1, season 2 are really good. Season 3 I still think is a hit or miss. Season 3, they really went with the whole trickiness more and more again, and to the point, because see, the Brotherhood of Evil, they get mentioned and kind of appear a little bit in season 1. Also, Mr. Nobody was part of that till he got kicked out. And that's what caused his wife to leave him. And so after that, then he went with Niles and became like Mr. Nobody and stuff. And then they show up in season 3, but then it's not really what you think. Now, I've already talked about season 3 in its entirety. Go watch that. I haven't talked about season 2 yet. I need to rewatch that and stuff. But yeah. Alrighty. Well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.